Welcome to Impact Innovations, where bold ideas meet real-world solutions. Join our host, Dr. Angela Gustis, as she dives in deep with thought leaders, change agents, and innovators who are making waves and moving mountains. So buckle up. Let's get ready to laugh, be inspired, and make an impact together.
Today, I had the pleasure of introducing Arold Jacques, who is the founder and CEO of Jacques Media Agency, a data-driven marketing firm specializing in UX design to maximize ROI and engagement. Born in the Bahamas, he has always been passionate about creative expression and entrepreneurship. With over 15 years of experience, Arold has developed innovative digital solutions for major brands, including Disney, Hillary for America, Ford, AARP, Geico, and National Geographic. Alongside his wife, Nora, a journalist, he co-founded the Charles County Journal. Together, they are proud parents to 5 children. Arold holds a bachelor's degree in computer arts and animation, a master's in design and media management, and a certificate in entrepreneurship from Goldman Sachs program. He actively mentors local students in digital media and storytelling, previously served on the Charles County Chamber Board, and remains passionate about digital transformation, particularly for spirit-led organizations.
I want to thank you for taking the time. I want to thank you for inviting me into your studio.
Absolutely, welcome.
Because this is absolutely amazing. And I love the colors. I love the vibe. I mean, it's just absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you, baby.
So I really want to have conversation with you to really talk about not just your entrepreneurial journey, but you have this magical gift of working with people like me. And I jokingly, now you've heard me say this, where you'll get those emails from me at 3:00 in the morning, like, oh, okay, I got this idea, and you know, and you have this magical talent of taking that and helping me to turn it into something tangible. Whether it's the app that you develop for us, whether it's the provider dashboard that you develop for us. Whatever it is, you have this amazing talent of taking these ideas. And so I want to talk about that as well. But before we really dig in, how did Jacques Media come about? Like, where did your love for videography and graphic design and all the things that you've created as this, like, where did that come from?
I want to say, I went to college, Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale, but I think that was just a nurturing ground for what was already there. I think my love came from just keeping people entertained. I grew up as a Michael Jackson freak, and I have photos to show just that. I loved Michael Jackson, and I was always in front of the crowd. You know what I mean? And
I can totally see that.
And I was just everything Michael Jackson in the 80s. And I was on 80s baby. And then I came here in the United States, skipping a whole different life and how I got here. I should not be here today. I think another part of it is being so appreciative of the opportunities that was never in sight when I grew up. I grew up in the Bahamas, on an island called Abaco.
Okay.
And growing up there in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have, what they have. Everybody, we all looked to America as a trendy place, place to be. But I loved tourism. I love looking around at tourism. I love seeing new things. And I love seeing when they come over, they bring new different objects with them from the U.S. that is not near my reach where I was as a local individual. And I've always been like, wow, where'd you get that? What is that? Where there were shoes, clothes, everything.
Wow.
It was like a new type of brand of clothes, whatever. That was inspiring to me. That was like, wow, there's a bigger world out there that a small person in the small island didn't get to see. And so when I did come over here and travel over here and I came to school, the schools were bigger. The schools had art programs. And I found myself doing art class. And I excelled. Tommy and I excelled. We're drawing art. And my teacher recommended I go to this school called Art Institute. And I graduated and I went to Art Institute, and there I went for computer arts and animation. I was aspiring to do Toy Story and Shrek. Like, I just wanted to be in that space. Unbeknownst to me, the structure in terms of how the industry was set, particular industry was not catered towards a young Black African American. Going to an art school, an art institute, like a lot of my classmates were Caucasian or Spanish or some different other culture. And although we persevered through it, it was just when it came down to getting a job, it was not in favor of me at all. But I did persevere, and I learned web design, I learned animation, I learned the foundations of video. I learned how to create dat tapes, and I learned the fundamental basics of everything.
Wow.
And I was a bachelor, and then I graduated, and I got a job here in the DC Metro. I mean, I literally couldn't get a job. I couldn't find a job in Florida at all. All my friends were going to LA or New York or Georgia. And so I landed here working at a L3 Communications. They did training material for the military. And so I was creating tank interface training modules using Flash at the time.
Entertaining, but probably a little in the box a little bit.
That was the box. That was the box because it was all about get a job. Because I did 2 years, I was like, you not staying around here. I'm out. And I got a job that was somewhere closer to my elective class that I was taking, business development.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm going to make this and figure this out. I didn't know what I was doing. I figured it out when I got the job.
But that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense in just getting to know you. Like, you're just like, yeah, I'll figure that out. Let's make it work. Okay.
And I was honest with my boss. I was like, this is new for me. And I just figure it out. And he respected that. And he honored that. Unfortunately, then I started to learn about the industry. And this is where I think my survival skills kick in.
Okay.
A 5-year contract ended up a 2-year contract.
Wow.
Here I am in this area, 2 years. And it's like, now the contract is done. Do I go back home? Do I stay? I didn't really venture out into this metro area. And so that time I was like, man, God became serious to me there.
It's nothing like those moments when you really have no direction.
No.
It's the quickest way for you to find your heavenly calling. Like, ooh, okay, God, your girl Angela. I know I haven't talked to you in a while. How and never.
I did one of those.
Okay.
I did one of those, and I ended up just like saying, I'm gonna take my chances and find a job. And I applied, and I found a job at a marketing agency in Georgetown, literally in a week. And I was like, wow. And they're supposed to hire me for 2 weeks. It's a 2 weeks contract, and I ended up staying for 2 years.
Wow.
Because
so there's some significance to this word two. I mean, this number 2.
It sounds most relevant because it's like, okay, 2 weeks turned into 2 years. And then I applied the same strategy. I figured it out.
But that's that entrepreneurial spirit, right?
I'm discovering me at this time.
Okay.
And working at the marketing agency was exciting because it gave me that diversity of projects and the seriousness behind the dollars that were going behind marketing. I've seen marketing, I've seen commercials before, but I've never put a price on it until I worked at a marketing agency. I thought, things were going for like $500, $1,000. And my eyes fell on an invoice. Yeah. $480K for what? An email?
Yeah.
A web? A landing page?
As an entrepreneur, I've been on the other side of those invoices where I'm just like, oh, so let me learn how to design a website. Let me figure this out, because as an entrepreneur, you end up on the opposite side of that because you can't afford those kinds of price tags. So I learned how to develop websites. I learned how to, set up podcasts. I learned, because having the big boys come in and help you do it, it's just not feasible. It's just not affordable.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that's an area where entrepreneurs, like, once they hit a road like that and see those numbers, it's gotta be an earthquake to you.
It
And
is.
it was for me.
It derailed you.
It sure did. And then, of course, that was around the recession. And that happened again.
Okay.
So recession just got 400 people fired. I was part of the crew.
Wow.
And I said, no. Why is this is America? I have a degree. I'm great and I have a degree. Like, what is this how everything is for real? This is the second time? And so I said, all right, I'm starting Jack Smith.
Wow.
And I started it. I bootstrapped for a while until Bootstrap was like, no. Why aren't you guys paying me on time? I needed like every 2 weeks, like I was getting my checks.
Yeah.
Didn't comprehend. And then Discovery picked me up.
Wow. So the Discovery Channel.
So now at Discovery Channel, working, and that's where I could say that I've learned a lot how the industry actually works.
Okay.
And the individual like me as an entrepreneur, how he positioned himself. Because that's when I started realizing a lot of people that was working there was from Los Angeles, California.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if somebody just stepped by and told me, say, yeah, I'm not staying here. I'm just there for a year and I'm going back to LA. Until somebody had to break the bread for me and say, oh yeah, that's how I get my raise when I get back. Because I have Discovery on my resume.
Wow.
I was like, so this is a real game out here. This is no joke coming trying to put 5, 10, 20 years. At Discovery, I learned local marketing.
Okay.
Because most of the projects we did, like Kate Boss and some of the campaign that do with like Kate Boss and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like Chopper, like those were really critical ads that would go on metro buses. And I learned like local marketing was so impactful. I knew nothing about this stuff.
So like the DC Metro.
Yes.
Okay.
Stuff that would go on trains. And I learned.
So Jack's Media cut its teeth
Yes.
with the Discovery Channel.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yes. And I went in as a W-2 employee, still identifying and say, I do have a business. I
Okay.
do have this on the side. I'm going to work it because I had no trust in the W-2 lifestyle. And so I bootstrapped and then I worked full time. And then I did the 1 year thing. So I'm like, I'm not going to renew because it was a very weird culture that I've experienced already working in the marketing industry where I like to see more of me around. And I hate, I don't want to continue to try to fit in. I'm used to fitting in. I'm from the Caribbean, you know. Diversity is all right. When you can see different sides, like, I'm attracted to a building across the street and it was TV1. That's when.
This story is just blowing me away.
Absolutely. I used to go to lunch and I heard these guys talking and doing the questions. You know, on the phone. When? And I was like, wow. Now, that was an amazing interest because it was like a like-minded targeting African-American industry. It is like I learned niche marketing then, like multicultural marketing, developing a Drupal website, a really full-blown website development at TG1, but most of all, just understanding a little bit of the business side of running and a niche product like TV1. Playing reruns of Martin and all that stuff. So I learned like you could do this stuff.
Wow.
Really? And so that's where Jack's Media kicked off. And then after TD1, after doing 2 years there, I went full-fledged working at Jack's Media Design Group, bringing on past clients at least, bringing on past clients, and they work with me direct, and like Geico.
Wow. That is amazing. And, you know, and I think you've touched on something that's important in the entrepreneurial journey, because it's not always so clean where you just like, okay, let me leave working for someone else and start working in my company. Sometimes it's a transition.
Yes.
They say that, and I forget where I learned this, but on average, it's about 8 years for a woman. Now, what it is for a man, I don't know, but it's about 8 years for a woman that they are running their company and working for someone else at the same time. It's less than that for men, but and that's very real, especially if you don't go the route of having, funders and, investors and things of that sort. And so understanding how to continue to build your brand while working for someone else, which is an important thing to do. So then it can be seamless.
Yeah.
So, and it's all about how you present it. So when you look at the Jacques Media website, Jacques Media has done work for Discovery and TV One and AARP and all these different organizations, but it's you that's done that. And I get it. When I talk about speaking engagements, there's speaking engagements that I did while I was an employee at Johns Hopkins, but I did it and I talk about it because Angela did it. And so it does become a part of the CMAG ecosystem. Yeah. And so how do you find that and make sure that you're being purposeful in the jobs that you're taking so it's growing you in a way that grows your business all at the same time? And that helps you to transition. And it really is a great way to do it instead of trying to just, okay, I'm going to just jump out here on my own and do something that I've never done for someone else. Because, why not learn on someone else's time?
I mean,
you know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to get a 2 on your performance evaluation. It's a whole different thing to get a 2 on a Google review.
I mean, as individuals, we do that, but companies do that because we have that system called using other people's money. I mean, businesses take a loan and capital.
It's the same concept.
Same concept, but it's in different light. Like, this carbon footprint that we leave behind isn't inevitable. It doesn't get erased.
Mm-hmm.
We've been there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we produced that. If I can be held for a bad record 10 years ago, if it can still be following today, I can still hold those projects I worked. Like, I'm entitled to say, okay,
I did that.
You know what I'm saying? Something, yeah, I did that. Like, some things you own up to, some things you're like, now I want to forget that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's like, nothing gets erased, especially your carbon footprint. Like, things you've made an impact with, whether or not the clients want to admit it or not. Like, I remember working, I had started Jacques Media, I'm going full-fledged, and I didn't have policies or any type of system in place. At this time, you could do the skill.
There you give it me teaching competitions. When you say you didn't have any policies in place.
I know that was.
No, but I get it. I mean, most people, especially I will say this. Most organizations that I've worked with as a consultant that have policies and procedures in place, it's because they had a license that they were trying to get and they had to have. I have run into very few. Now, some people will have an employee handbook because somebody has said you need to have an employee handbook. But when it comes to policies and procedures, I'm telling you, most people that have policies and procedures is because they were mandated to sit and put them together. That's one version. Or you have the other version of folks who don't have any policies or procedures together because nobody said they had to, so they just start doing the work. They hang their shingle and let's rock and roll, let's do it. But then about 3, 4, 5 years in, or when you start hiring staff and things of that sort, it's just like, well, this is how we do it. Well, where's that written?
Nowhere.
It's in my mind.
Yep.
It's because I said so.
Yeah.
You do it this way because I said so.
Yeah, and then like just looking back, how it was so difficult to scale.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I know I didn't have, like I started trying to working with contractors and partnering with other groups. But when it came down to collecting invoices or sending invoices or like saying, hey, nah, we don't do it that way. There was none of that. Like, it was just like I was trained to be, I was just like a train track and there was just training over me. It almost made like running your business early on like this is a mistake. Mm-hmm. And it's like you run back to like, I'm getting 9 to 5. And I actually did until I ran back and I said, okay, I'm getting another job. And that job happened to be where I was a user experience designer lead on healthcare.gov.
Please stop it.
Yes.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, all right, like, I think it's working for my good scheme. So I worked on that project for 2 years.
Okay.
A year and 8 months. I would say a year and 8 months. And I learned a lot about healthcare in terms of use or making sure that user experience is cheap and 508 compliance was like, that's when I started really getting into 508 compliance, WCAG and accessibility, addressing the blind and the deaf. And that was wow to me. I was just like, I latched on, and that's kind of the core of what I do today. Like I design, I approach it from what I grew up with in the IS. You introduce yourself. You say good morning. You have your introductions. You meet somebody new. It's those same things online. Like you have to properly introduce your product or your environment to whoever is visiting your house. You know, when you introduce it to you on some water. It's the same things online. How do you make it less friction for somebody to get to the goal?
That is really interesting. And working with you, I see that in how you have created this way of, people call it engagement, but it's not engagement. It's how do you tap into what you would receive in person through an online platform? And, you know, people call it engage. It's not just engagement. It's not just about clicks. It's your website is welcoming someone into your office, into your home. And that makes total sense.
Yes. There's if business owners, or at least those that are selling products or has a service, can think about it, it almost reflects. They say, if your car is dirty, your kitchen's dirty. They say, if your kitchen's dirty, your bathroom's dirty. It's the same life concepts of your website. Like, you know, if something is off, most likely whatever you put out is going to reflect some of that offness. And you can address it, and then you'll see the backflow on everything else you did.
Wow. That's amazing. I've never thought about it. Like, even as I've worked with you, because it's like I hear you talk about these things and I see these things like, oh my gosh, this is great. I love it. But not really understanding what went into it, which speaks to the human side of what you do and how you're able to translate those 3 o'clock in the morning emails into a website, because you're actually taking the human element of it and creating something digital that is engaging, but from a real perspective, not just flashy lights type perspective.
That's serious. It's serious. And I'll go back into my childhood. We grew up in Ireland. We grew up, I would say, they call it shanty poor, but my mom never made me feel like I never felt it. Somebody had to tell me, oh no, if you live in here, then that's what it is. That's like, well, I didn't feel it. So whatever you say is null and void. But it's fortunate that my mom, you know, came into the United States with all 4 of my brothers and sisters, and I was left behind.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I was left behind with some relatives, and the relatives were worse. Well, anyway, they didn't take care of us. So my godmother took me in. This is me at 10 years old. So my godmother took me in, and she was a business lady. She had no kids, but she had houses, and she was renting them out. She was like big time. But she took me in, but she was like monstrous, like short-tempered, don't mess around. And so it's like I was put into this business, sell a product, you know, watch the house, or somebody come and just give it to them, sell a cigarette here, or whatever they want to sell it. And I was like, what in the world? So I got to attribute some of those survival skills to that time frame where I had to basically manage her of homes in her whole environment. And she taught me how to cook. She taught me how to be on my own in the house and watch it and like be accountable. I got some good spanking for stuff, you know, because I wanted to go play. And she didn't want me to die on her account. And so I couldn't go in, you know, certain areas or whatever. And my parents had problems getting into the United States because my papers are all in shambles. Throughout all the hurricanes, our documents got flooded. So it was like doing that stuff was just a mess. And so my mom, as wise as she is, paid somebody to smuggle me into the United States. So
This story is just getting, this story is just going further and further. I had no clue. We've known each other for well over a year. Okay, keep going.
I was smuggled into that. I don't even name the bar. It was a huge bar. It's the commission now. It was just there just for me. So it's no longer existing. And middle of the night, somebody said, "Hey, is so and so looking for you?" In the middle of the night, yeah, they came and grabbed me and dumped me on the boat. I'm like, whoa. So I arrived in the U.S. next day, and I got a cab. And I drove to a bus hound. I was trying to explain to my parents, "Hey, this is where I'm at. This is Lord's vehicle." I'd never seen a bus like a
Wow.
It has a dog on the side of it. I didn't know these things.
Wow.
Sheltered small iron board.
And I guess, I mean, even when I've been to the Bahamas, you don't see greyhounds. So, I mean, I guess as a little kid, it's like, what is this thing?
Oh, what is this huge stuff? This is huge bus I'm trying to express. We don't have street signs like that. It was like, the street sign says, yada, 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 and I'm here. Come and get me. We don't know where you at. There's a lot of lights.
No, but this is when you went to Florida.
This is when I arrived in Florida, and I was dropped off at a station, and I was trying to express and explain where I was at, and I had.
And how old were you?
I was 14 years old. Oh man! So yeah, I've learned. Before I even came, I learned how to survive. I learned how to work, make money. I was doing jobs that adults should be doing. I started working on the boat, on the docks where you have to offload the boats, offload the big containers. I was unstrapping big containers. At age 13, 14, I was unstrapping it and that sort of a thing. And then I got a job selling newspaper from a guy that saw me and said, "Why aren't you in school?" And it was a Caucasian guy, and I think he came from America. He had a son. And he said, "Why aren't you in school?" I said, "I don't have papers or whatever." He said, "Okay, I'll work on it, but you want to sell newspaper? You can get 25 cents for every one you sell. That's 50 cents. I'll start selling newspaper. The Tribune and the Guardian at a stoplight. In less than 2 weeks, he found some way to get me in school.
Wow.
This was 7th grade, and then I did 6 months in 7th grade. Until I hit that boat and then got imported here in 7th grade.
Wow.
And then I came here in the U.S. and I had to get a placement test. And they said, "Oh, you belong in grade 9.
So not only did you get smuggled into the U.S., you just skipped grades.
I skipped all those grades. I never even finished 7.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, maybe the grades are higher there or back home or lower. I'm not, but they say, no, you're supposed to be in grade 9 based on the age and you aced all the tests. Like I just aced everything. It was just like, wow. And I blew through high school. I graduated, ahead of my brother. I just blew through. I just blew through high school and blew through college. I finished a year early. I don't know what I was on. I did 3 years instead of 4 years. So I'm still discovering that individual because everything was happening for me, to me, by me, not by me, but to me. So it's like, wow, who am I? Who was made and who am I actually? And so discovery is still at hand.
So, oh my
Yes.
Oh, wow. So I want to chew on this word discovery. Because I get that. Like when your past is so different from your future, going through this process of self-discovery and figuring out who that is, because like we were talking about, at my core, I'm still this 13-year-old kid. But then who is that 13-year-old kid? And taking the time to unpack that, especially when it's tied to some other challenges and things. Because, for me at 13 years old, I was I was working because my dad's an entrepreneur and he believed in working. I had my first job when I was 12. So, but it wasn't tied to survival. It was tied to, you need to not sit on your tail all summers. Like, Cam, what? You about to go to Camp G&M Oil and go
I ain't got that.
have a job. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I did some camp. Like when you're little, I think that was my mom. Like, Rudy, we're going to let Angie go. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Not that she really sounded like that, but in my brain, that's how she sounded. But once I was 12, I was working during the summers. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you unpack that and figure out who that person is, And one of the things, I was having this conversation with a colleague earlier, one of the things I recognized in leadership, and I'm curious to see if you've had a similar experience, as you grow as a leader, as you grow and people start paying attention to you and respecting you for your work, your talents, your business, whatever, anything that you did not deal with, like as I called the muck, when you are in a position of power, all that starts to manifest. And if you don't deal with it, the best way I can explain it, and it's a horrible explanation, but it's the one that makes the most sense in my brain. When, back in the day when you would drink too much, it don't matter how many showers you took, you still gonna stink like alcohol the next day.
Yes.
Here, how many showers you take is gonna come out of your pores. And I feel like if we have stuff that we didn't deal with from when we were a kid, if we don't deal with it, but it doesn't come out of your pores, similar to alcohol, it don't come out of your pores until the next day. In leadership and in entrepreneurship and growth, it doesn't come out until you hit a certain stage. And the thing about it is the person that's been doing the drinking, they don't smell it.
Not at all. Yeah, clueless.
But the people around you do. So when you get to a certain point in your career and what you did last night starts stinking, if you don't deal with it, the people around you will smell it. And those are the people who will be like, well, he ain't doing such and such because of blah, 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 blah. And they're right oftentimes, even though you don't want to hear it, but they're right oftentimes because people see it.
You are right, because you hit me on the head. I think you were working on something, and you was like, hey, you just need policies. And that is something that has always taunted me in terms of policies. And it's like, okay, I had one, and then I revamped it, and I pushed it to the side because it was slowed down.
Yeah, because you got work to do.
I was like, slow me down. And then one day we're working saying, the only reason why that's happening is because you're probably not working within the policy. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Oh my God. But I didn't do that until I was off of the call. Where you see, I was off the call, so you didn't even realize that.
I had no clue until this
I
moment.
was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Oh my God, I can't make it far if I don't have some system to pass down. And I think you're hitting it on the head here, because I think it's those things, just like, and a lot of people have a lot of stuff that similar stories to what I've had. And until you understand what happened, what,
and how it's impacted.
how it's impacted you, you'll get to a place where now your character is hoarding your whole opportunity. You done slipped out of the mouth and said something. You never dealt with your diversity, in terms of how you talk around certain people. You never even dealt with, who you are as an individual. And then it only comes out when you're not even focused on it. Because now, in the place of power, I feel that we focus on control. People can see.
Yeah.
And we're not focused on the things that you forgot about. You don't have no cage, no chain on it. It's just going to be, that's the only thing that has access to just leak out.
Yep. Because it comes out your pores. That there's no other better way to put it. You know what I mean? And if you don't deal with it, You can shower all day long, but you still gonna stink like liquor the next day.
So let me ask you a question. So how would one, like, whether you're running a 500, agency, a 500 team, and individual, or a 200 team, or just a two team, what should one do, the steps that you take to check for that? Is that a counseling session, or is that like a deal with self, take more trips and understand who you are? What do you do?
In my personal opinion, I think that pretty much every human walking on this earth needs therapy. And I say that because it is a space in which you are able to unpack things and talk through things in a healing way that allows you to move forward. You can take all the trips you want. You can read all the books you want. You can talk to all your friends. You can have the girls' nights, the guys' nights, the whatever you want. But if you don't take the time to do the work, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I remember when I was in therapy, and I talk about this in different moments and different speaking engagements, stuff like this, because I think it's something that a lot of people can probably relate to. I had this hard divide of Angie versus Angela. Because Angie was the little kid. And Angie was the one with the learning disabilities. And Angie was, you know what I mean? Angie was the whatever. I'm not going to even get into all of that. And when I got older, I was about my freshman, sophomore year in college. And as I was introducing myself to these new people I was meeting and stuff like that, I introduced myself as Angela. And I really developed this hard divide between the little kid, who in some ways I was very embarrassed by, because I just, I had so many challenges in so many different ways. And so one of the things that my therapist had me do was write it was the hardest thing I had ever done. I had to write a letter to Angie to explain to her why I didn't like her.
Oh my God.
Baby?
You abandoned her. Why did you do that? I'm getting
What? Because I did. I got to the point where if somebody called me Angie, like, unless you were a friend from back in the day, so I would let you slide, I would, excuse me, I introduced myself as Angela, not Angie.
Oh.
Like, it was real, like, when I say it was a divide, it was, and it wasn't until I was grown and was in a position of power that there were things that Angie had experienced and witnessed and dealt with that were then manifesting. I realized, because of my challenges with my relationship with my father, which I in many ways had a great relationship with my dad, but there were things about my dad that I was not proud of that impacted how I viewed him. And there were some things that sort of bubbled up through that, which impacted the way I dealt with other men. And so as a leader, let somebody tell me something. Now, let a woman mess up and I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's sit down. Let's discuss it, this, that, and the other. Let a man do that. My mom was someone who was a very emotional person. I'm not a big crier. My mother can cry rather than head. That's just who she was, right? Because of the dynamics of my parents, when I see somebody crying, in my mind, that's weakness. So I'm just like, get it together. And so when someone was in my office and they start getting all weepy, I'm just like, do you need a tissue? Like, I don't understand. What are the, and I'm like trying to find the words to not be a complete ass. But basically, what are you crying for? This is work. What are you crying? Why are you in my, that's what's going through my head. What are you crying for? I don't understand. But it didn't impact, like it wasn't a thing until I was sitting behind a desk and had a nice old nameplate where I'm just like, what you doing? What I'm gonna need you to get it together. And so when you start getting into positions of power, all those things start bubbling up and you don't even see it coming, right? I didn't know that I was treating men versus women differently. I didn't know that I was this hard person that when I see people cry, I'm just like, crying for? I'm gonna need you to get it together.
Wow.
You know, but again, when you're in a position of power, you know, and my son is gonna absolutely hate me forever saying this, but just real talk, as a parent, you know, when James would cry when he was little, I had this thing where I was like, look, no blood, no guts, get it together. Like, if you're not in physical pain, I don't understand why you're crying. And so my poor child at 2-3 years old talking about no blood, no guts. And luckily I had the wherewithal, like, oh God, I'm teaching this boy not to cry. What am I doing?
Yeah.
But again, when you get into a position of power, being a parent is a position of power. And all my stuff was starting to manifest. So I realized I need to deal with this because if not, I'm about to mess up a whole generation
Of James.
of James and James Jr. and James the Third. I'm about to jack them all up.
Mm-hmm. I went through similar transition for me, parenting. The first signs of a short of parenting, because as an individual, I'm a single man, like, you're not going to let we dating. No, you're not. Like, don't judge me. But when you become a parent, because when I grew up, I got spankings. I was unruly. And so I started spanking my kids. Just out of like, spank first, ask questions later. Why are you doing that? Like, because that's what got me in check. But that's what got me in check. Not really. And so my wife is, you know, she's a softie, a crier. She don't like that type of stuff. She didn't have to get spanking. So it was a great match for me to be like, okay, let's go upstairs. Let's like do it down here. So it took her feeling bad and feeling low one day to be like, wow, so we don't have to spank. You can do it a different way.
You know what's so funny? I had the complete opposite situation. So my mom, I think it's 2 times she laid hands on me. And, you know, and I 100% deserved it, right? Because my mom could look at me and I'd be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, I was that kid. Again, my child is going to hate. James was not that child. I could look at him and he'd be go on. The cute. I'm going to keep going, doing, you know what I mean? Like, it just didn't, I could threaten all day. If you don't come here, James, come.
We're about to get it. It was worth it.
I wasn't going to do nothing more. It was my mama that said, James is a different child than you, honey. He's not afraid of you in any way, shape, or form. Not that your children should be fearful, but at some level, there should be something that says, I shouldn't do this because my mama, you know, there should be something. And what I was creating there was no space in that.
So when you just did that, it tells me that as individuals outside of a company structure, but we'll go back to the company structure, that we have to build policies for ourselves.
Come on now.
Like, when you look at the policy structure or what's entailed in the policy, and you'll see those same things, we could actually create our own policy as how we operate in life.
And how we function.
Yeah, or what we carry over. Do I need to say what my dad did or my mom did? Should I borrow it and do the
same way you learn from previous jobs?
Yep.
And previous supervisors.
You bring those over?
Are you going to bring that over? Yes or no? Did that work? Did it not work? And it is true. You build policies and you also develop boundaries.
Oh, gosh.
Because if you don't develop any boundaries, Are you going to have an open door policy? Or are you not?
Or you not open door marriage? Like, because it's still
There's policies and procedures for everything. And if you think you can function in life without them, it doesn't work.
wow.
Now, one thing that we both have in common is that we work with our wives.
Yeah.
And I made you start laughing before I even asked the question. I'm not trying to get you in trouble now. No, I'm just kidding. And I've met Nora and I absolutely adore her. And you all are very different, but work so well. Like you can just see the yin and yang. And in many ways, that's how Kathy and I are. Like we are very different people, but we come together and make this thing work. And so talk about a little bit about your experience working with your wife and Jacques Media and, because I understand that you all have very similar talents. You come to it from different ways. So I've worked with both of you and you're very different people. You come at it very differently, in a beautiful way, in like a very synergistic way. What has that journey been like working with your wife?
Wow. First off, we're both like, we love God. Like I grew up in altar boy in the Catholic Church, and she grew up in a Christian home under bishops and pastors.
Okay.
Prior to us even meeting, and I would say I'm the technical person, the solver, and she's the organizer. She's a system person.
Okay.
Without a system, you're just an evil person. That's how I see it. Like, if you don't have a system or a process, why are you skipping to 2 and you never did 1? Like, I'll jump from 1 to 3
all day long
because I'm an animator. I can create keyframes. The in between will just fit right out. Right?
I'll figure it out.
And her, that's not cool.
Okay.
It's a lot of stuff, and for me, meeting her, I brought all of my entrepreneurial knowledge and kind of just blabbed it on her. It's like, you're going to work. You're going to create a business. You're not going to be a W-2 employee. And I was just lying about it. And then she discovered that she does have those tendencies and those skills to house and strategize. I've always called her a copywriter because when I went to work in the industry, I would come back and say, "You a copywriter? You're writing books already." Like she was writing at 3 years old.
Wow.
And reading. She was reading at 3 years old.
Okay.
And I'm like, I had these huge stories about her. I'm like, "You a copywriter? You know how much they make where I work? They're like $250 an hour." And I would keep telling that. I would keep telling her that. And eventually she started writing books for other people or pastors, and then she wrote her book, and then she was writing plays, and then she was doing projects, and then she started doing social media, and then she started doing strategy.
Wow.
And then I was like, yes. And for a season when I launched Jacques Media, my expectation went up. It was automatic. I didn't have to ask, "Oh, you want to help? We all work together." But that was not the case. That was not the case because she's somebody who likes structure. I didn't have that. Like I said again, there was no policy, there was no system. It was just freelance, go on, find work, knock it out, get it done. And she thrives under a system. And that's what we have here. And I still have issues with systems. This is my natural being. I'm a water, So I don't like boundaries that much because it kind of hinders me from solving issues. I find ways to solve things by looking at it from a reverse innovation perspective.
Wow.
So I use a lot of reverse innovation to solve things, but she loves, you got to go forward. 1, 2, 3 to get the Z. Don't go to Z. But I do opposite. And so we mesh where she brings me the organization that I don't have or don't bow down to. And I bring her the I would say chaos of just execution. Like I execute and then I think afterwards. I'm a quick thinker, and I just want to get it.
And you're a
get an
risk
idea,
taker.
a risk taker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a risk taker. I nearly lost my life taking risks.
Wow.
Yeah, I nearly drowned jumping in and off a dock, thinking I can swim. I can swim. I can do it. I can swim. I can do it, and I jumped.
Wow. So like literally you jumped in the pool and
Yeah.
didn't know what you were doing.
It was actually the ocean. Yeah, I jumped, and I didn't know what I was doing. But the under the water was beautiful. Like I said, I never I'll see that experience again. But somebody's jumped in and saved me. I don't know who it was today. I don't know who it was. It's too bad.
You know, it's the story you're telling.
Yes.
It is so funny. So my family gets mad at me because I'm always talking about things when I'm on camera, but they be like, so Kathy and my big sister and I went to the Dominican. And this just speaks to how we look at things so differently. So Kathy says out loud, I remember her saying it, the water's very dark over there.
Mm.
It didn't register what that meant. So we were on this snorkeling, not scuba diving, snorkeling. We were on this snorkeling little expedition thing that you go on when you're on vacation, right? So I'm going to go snorkeling. Kathy says, I'm going to stay over here. I said, okay. I go out there. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm like, it's not hard. I know how to swim. And I got a tube to breathe.
I'm good.
This is easier than swimming. Let's do this. I go out there. It's gorgeous. I mean, just some of the most beautiful fish. And I mean, it's just mind blowing. I'm by myself. I didn't left the group. I'm out there just doing my thing. I literally came to an underground cliff. I've never seen anything like it in my entire life. Literally, because, you know, I'm in the Dominican. The water is clear. You can see forever. And I literally, I'm swimming with my stupid little snorkel thing. And literally just all of a sudden I can see
From white to blue.
all way down. Like literally it was as if I had floated off of a cliff. It scared the living stew out of me. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Wow.
So I made a U-turn in the water, but where I made the U-turn was about this much room between the top of the water and the coral reef. But I'm swimming. I don't care. I could feel my legs like bam, 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 bam. Like, I mean, just killing coral reef. I mean, just swim, because I'm full swimming. I took the stupid snorkel off because I was just like, whatever. Because I just saw a cliff underground. I need to get back to the beach. So I get back to Kathy and I stand up, blood all running down my legs. Like when I say I tore my legs up swimming through this coral reef, just wearing it out. Kathy says to me, didn't you hear me say it was real dark blue over there?
She was not descriptive.
But she thought it out.
I see. Before her.
She was like, okay, it's real dark over there. I'm going to stay over here. Well, like she thought it out. She took the time to think it through and knew what her boundaries were. Me, I was like, whatever, I'm just going to go do. And it bit me in the tail because she was chilling and my goofy butt was out there. And God bless her, my big sister Danny, she was out there. She got saved by some little man and we've never seen him again, ever again, you know. But it's so funny that you use the example of just jumping. But it's sort of like that's how we're built, where you just jump and then you figure it out later. And I just went snorkeling. I didn't take a class. I was like, I can swim. And I got this stupid little tube. I could just breathe through that. I know how to do it.
It does speak to if everybody took a class to run a business or to do something. Who was the first person who did it before they did it? Like Bill Gates, you know, these guys, Mark Zuckerberg and doing Facebook, like.
But nobody taught them.
Nobody, they learned computer and they came up with an idea and they jumped.
They just
like, and I think when earlier you were saying that you need to figure out your mess or who you are. Part of your mess is that innocent you, that beautiful you. It's messy because until you figure it out, it won't be streamlined. And it's like that risk taker, because I'm taking risks now.
Mm-hmm.
Like we just launched on Charles County Journal, like a local news, because there's a lack of local news that is kind of exposing the greatness and the beauty of this Southern Maryland, which is Charles County. And we said we want to build local news. Come to find out, local news was popping. Like local news is. I'm like, I didn't know that. I just did it
And you just jumped.
during pandemic. I was like, I have a camera, go out and interview people or interview restaurants and businesses, and that became something.
Wow.
Now it's gone from Waldorf Live to Charles County Journal, and now I'm building a team of journalists, and it reminded me of selling respect.
Wow.
And when you're like, is this?
That's full
Am I
circle.
like, is it first thought that? Am I living my young life, or what is it? Like, why is it all
I
that?
think you just jumped into something, and I don't know if you meant it or not, but there's balance to figuring out who we are and dealing with our mess and embracing our mess,
Yes.
because some of the mess is actually really awesome.
And discovery is like super awesome. It's like, yo, that's cool. And
That's good stuff.
nobody else is going to do that. So that means I'm the best candidate because I'm a risk taker and everybody else is managing risk. Like,
And
no,
they spending so much time thinking about it.
and you out there already, you back, like, oh yeah, it was cool. It was like Lindo, but it was got there, but I made it back.
I mean, my legs are chewed up a little bit,
but I'm back.
but I just got back in the water and it healed up because water's amazing.
So
And yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
that's
So just letting the mess and I think about the first project that you and I worked on, where it was just like, I want to do this thing, I want to do this remote patient monitoring, and I want an app and I want a dashboard, and and one of the things I think that you and I really, really connected on is we always have a sense of urgency.
yeah. That's it.
You know what I mean? Like it has to be done.
Yeah, like I'm gonna do it. If you don't do it, I'm gonna do it.
Because the thing about it is that the folks with the big teams and the bureaucracies and the red tape and all the things, they're still trying to work it out where we've already done it. And now we're at market and we're doing, and yes, there are tweaks that we need to make because we're like, we should have, maybe
That's the planners. And that's what you're good at. Where you're saying, how do you get teams to really focus on?
because I have people that work with me. And that's the thing about this thing called leadership is you have to figure out what your strengths are and where you're weak and have a team that fills those weaknesses. And people talk about it all the time, but it's real, because I have people, whether it's Kathy, who is my business partner, but also purposefully creating an environment where my team can say, Angela, that don't make no sense. Angela, we need to slow down. Angela, why don't you? Angela, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't always have to come.
She's 2 languages.
Joanna Martin, yes, I'm calling you out on this here podcast. But that's real. But you have to create that within your team. Yes. So that people feel comfortable, because again, if you and your muck, if you will, doesn't allow people, because you have arrived, so now you must be the subject matter expert all the time, and you don't create an environment where people can come to you and just be like, hey, Arold, that's a hot ass mess. We need to do X, Y, and Z. Now you've done yourself a disservice because they know that it's not going to work. But they're not going to say to you it's not going to work because you haven't created that space. So you have to create that space where, because it's one thing to hire smart people. It's another thing to empower them.
You hit it on the head, because individuals, risk takers, and I haven't looked at the data, but I'll definitely follow through. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, are probably the most qualified, I would say, subject matter experts, because they collect data.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they don't like taking risk like for instance, when you went to the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
you went out there, you saw the riff, you saw the edge, you saw the blue. Everything you photographed on your way back during your panic is data.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody on the beach can tell Angela there was no reef and no edge. There was nothing. Nobody can convince you otherwise. Matter of fact, you can go back and say there was blue, there was a long one, there was a jellyfish. Because all that data you can teach from. All that data from all the risk takers on the beach, you can go back and preach a sermon and say, lesson 1, when somebody tells you there's
Then the water is dark blue
over there,
you don't go
there. And if you do go,
this is what
be caution. And this is your max or limit. I mean, this is your risk,
That's
but if
good.
you make it back, but if you do go, I'll tell you how to get back. Now, the how to is where you come in as a subject matter expert. I'll tell you how to get back.
And what you basically explained is who we are as consultants. Because oftentimes what I'm telling people is like, The Color Purple is one of my favorite movies. So it's don't trade places with me, Miss Sealy. Like,
Been there.
I've been there. Don't do this. This is how you do this. This is what you should do. This is how you handle that situation. Because it comes from experience. I say all the time whenever I hear people talk about getting an executive coach, I say you need to look at the coach's resume.
Yep.
Because if they've never been an executive, and I'm not talking about their coaching practice of one.
Yeah.
Because they went to a John
University
Doe certificate program, and now they're a coach.
Are they paid for it?
Yeah, exactly. But your last job was flipping burgers somewhere, but now you somebody's executive coach. I'm sorry, that's not how this works. Because unless you're stressed about payroll, you're not a business owner.
Absolutely.
That's real.
Or fire.
Or fired somebody, or you know what I mean?
Or lose a contract.
You know what I mean? So it's like when people call themselves a business coach, it's like, okay, who have you coached? Where have you worked? What experiences have you had? So, if you ever, people, I say it all the time, if you're looking for an executive coach, you need to ask for their resume.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing advice.
Because if they have not run an organization of the same kind of size or what have you, then how are they going to coach you?
That's a good advice. Any other good advice you want to, before you close out, you want to give to people, like in terms of policy and paying attention to your childhood?
So, I mean, I do think that leadership development, one of the things that, I was very, very blessed to talk to these amazing women doing my dissertation work. And there were 4 themes that came out of that work of what they all either had or needed during their ascension in their career. It was mentorship, communication skills, business acumen, and self-evaluation. And the self-evaluation was not just taking these wonderful, different evaluative tools, and they all have a purpose, but self-evaluation, really understanding who you are and who you are as a leader, who you are as a person, who you are at that 12-year-old core. Because all of us, we mature, but we all are like some 13-year-old kids with bills. If you really think about it, and it's so funny. My mom used to say to me when I was younger, she's like, Angela, I'm telling you, at my core, I'm still a little kid. And I never understood what she was talking about. But now as an adult, like, I wish she was still here so I could just have that conversation with her. Like, dude, I get what you were trying to explain. Because when I saw my mom, I saw this pulled together, amazing. She was a diva before divas was even a thing, right? She's just an amazing, amazing human. And so it's like, if you don't deal with who that 13-year-old is, because being an adult, you're still the same person. You just have different responsibilities and a much better wardrobe. That's it. And so I I really stress, and I feel like in order to scale your business and get beyond being a solopreneur and get beyond, you know, the startup phase successfully, you have to learn leadership development. And the only ways to learn that is through mentorship, business acumen, self-evaluation, and communication skills. And, you know, and it came up through the research, and it's also been a part of my journey. So that's that. So if you ask, that's what that would be
That's
my
amazing.
thing. That would be my thing. We've gone on all kinds of tangents and stuff, but it's been this has been just so much fun and so many amazing nuggets. Your story is phenomenal. So I want to leave you with a question. So what, you know, you talked already about the and I forgot it just that fast. The Charles County Journal, the Charles County Journal. In addition to that, like where are you going with Jacques Media? Like what are your goals with Jacques Media?
So Jacques Media is going to be user experience first agency. Okay. Now, right now, it is branching off to be supportive of the local news. And so those two is going to be meshed together where it becomes a structured agency that actually produces for Charles County Journal. Charles County Journal also has video promoted content, so it's really like embedded in the community, but it's also branched out. We want to make sure that it stays liquid enough to where a lot of it is with user experience work, which is government. We want to focus just on user accessibility. And so really niche, we don't want to be all about the place, but we love the healthcare industry. And I think that's why we kind of work together, because I've come from the healthcare industry. The expectations and the need for that, it's always going to be clear. And so we made our scheme to master that. But in addition to that, you hear a lot of people say, oh, you want to own 7 businesses. I wish you would try. I mean, we're on tune. It's like, wow, impressed your spread thin, because building a team of journalists who just have passion to write and just want to have their content out there, and building a video team, and then getting the studio here where people can come in and talk about their brand, and installing a huge ad server to help them get branding and exposure within the community. It's a lot of work, and at the same time, just in managing proposals and managing contracts is a lot when you have a team. So it's like, when you're talking about these policies, just a little bit of policy can help you. No policy is the danger.
Yeah.
But a lot of policies even better. And so we find more now that really awesome for both brands. And Jacques Media is just going to be a user experience first agency.
Well, while you say that you're not going to have a whole bunch of businesses, I feel like that's not going to be the case, because I can't imagine that you don't get any new ideas and start. So, but the key to it is, in my experience, is number one, you start building your team. Number two, you can start cross-pollinating your teams. And
that's fair.
You know what I mean? So they don't have to function in isolation, which helps you to not have to function as 2 different people. And you can start to pull it all together. And so having some people that work across everything, that's part of how, you know, we've been able to create all these different business structures, because they work together to a certain degree. You know, like our consulting firm, we work with behavioral health and healthcare organizations, but then the healthcare organization, the in Geotech Health, the remote patient monitoring, really our target audience is providers and helping. So our consulting work helps us to know how to help providers implement
that makes sense.
RPM into their practice. And if they need additional help, we can help them because we have the whole consulting team, right? And then the foundation we're building out as a research institute to actually write the papers, do the research, use the data that we have to try to help other, businesses, research scientists, what have you. So it all works together, even though they are all separate entities with separate teams.
So I gotta say this, like what you just explained, because I work with you on some of those models, I am actually integrating with them the two that I have. But it's good to see and try to mimic, and I know where you're gonna go with that. It's good to see how somebody's, I like to be just like them, like I like how to do it, but without knowing how to implement it, which I find you're great at.
Well, thank you.
It's a whole different story. It's like somebody has to walk you through that.
And that's part of the purpose of Impact Innovations, is bringing people together, talking, having these amazing conversations about what it is like being an entrepreneur, and talking about the things that typically are not talked about in entrepreneurship, and helping people to understand and see behind the scenes of what it really takes to do this kind of work. And like, that's the beauty of these things, and an opportunity for people to tell their stories, and, because people see Jacques Media and it's doing amazing things and all that, but like understanding that starting your own periodical ties to a piece of you and a piece of your journeys in a very different and emotional way, right? Like nobody would know that. They see Arold, the sexy, salt and pepper, dressing, always looking fabulous. Like, you know what I mean? People see that. And it's like people talk about it all the time. That's the whole purpose of this. And I thank you for being a part of the conversation and being so transparent and talking about your story and sharing just such great information. This has been an absolute pleasure.
This is a pleasure. This is a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I think this is going to go big time, because the impact of what we're doing now is simply all the stuff we've done innovatively to get here. And so,
Absolutely.
I hope our story, I hope this somebody finds value in this, and I know somebody will find value in this, impact your lives. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening. Join us next time for more Impact Innovation.